Hi, I'm Erica Terblanche. I'm a positive psychologist and I am passionate about bringing the science of happiness and well-being to people at no cost. We are now in the 8th episode on our series on the building blocks of happiness. And today we will do the final episode on mental mastery. What we're going to talk about today is positive stress. Let's get straight into it. No series on mental mastery will be complete unless we talk about stress. Why? Because all of us in our modern lives face an inordinate amount of stress. Financial stress, relationship stress, social stress, the stress of a to-do list that's as long as your thigh. We all know these stresses. The secret of how to deal with stress, however, is how you perceive it. For a very long time, stress has been touted as the killer of our modern times. Until researchers such as Kelly McGonigal from Stanford and many other researchers began to look at what role your perception of stress plays in how stress impacts you at a physiological and psychological level. So one of the most profoundly insightful studies on stress was with 10,000 people for a longitudinal period of 10 years. And what the researchers wanted to understand was how your perception of stress impacts your health and your longevity. And here is what they found. I highly recommend watching Kelly McGonigal's TED Talk on this. It's fascinating. But what they found after 10 years is that those people who were very stressed, who had very high levels of stress, and who also believed that stress was very bad for them, had the highest rates of mortality and also had very poor health outcomes. Those people who had equally high stress and who believed that stress was good for them, that somehow their stress was an enabler, had much better levels of longevity, much better levels of health, even than those people who reported very low or no stress. This is profound. Even at a physiological level, Kelly McGonigal and her colleagues showed that one's arteries actually behave differently, whether you think stress is bad for you or whether you think stress is adaptive. You know, personally in my own life, nobody likes being stressed. Nobody likes that feeling just before you walk onto a stage and you have to talk to 1,000 people. Nobody likes that feeling. Oh, very few people like that feeling. But when that feeling comes, I remind myself that stress is actually adaptive and that this feeling that I'm feeling right now is not stress, it's excitement. And that my heart is racing and that the cortisol is running through my veins and that I have just been given a beautiful boost of adrenaline so that my mind is clear, so that the blood is flowing very, very fast through my brain, so that I am oxygenated so I can do the best talk of my life. I begin to think, when you have to face stressful emotions, I find very often the best way to deal with it is to not run away from it, but to say yes and to run at the lion. The so what, now what for everybody watching this podcast is this. The next time you actually feel stressed, begin to think of it as an ally. Begin to think of it as you are now at the start line running your first 10K race ever. You are getting into an adaptive state. Your stress is supporting you to do something. That's the first step. The second step is make sure that you have big on buttons and also big off buttons. The problem is not stress. The problem is chronic stress. So make sure that you have very, very powerful restoration practices, napping, meditation, spending a lot of time in nature. All these ways, breathing practices, all these ways will help you to de-stress so that you're not always on. The most successful people have high peaks of on and very high peaks of off. Thank you so very much for listening. Make stress your friend.